Okay, stay tuned for Video the Vote. John Ellis is going to be up.
We're talking because I'm part of a bill that's already running late. So. But I wanted to thank everybody for coming out and for wanting to help do something to save our elections. And Video the Vote is still a growing attempt at being just one faction of citizen oversight, but I'm hoping that we're going to be able to keep making a bigger and bigger impact. So I just wanted to say, because I know I'll forget this, that if you guys are interested, right after this, Suzanne is making badges at the table, so she can make one that'll say Video the Vote with your name on it. It'll be really cool, and that's totally the stuff that we would like to be able to get the jump on, which we'll see if that happens by election day, the personalized shirts and name bands and all that. So, my name's John. I don't know how many people saw the film I did last night that sort of went into Video the Vote, but I appreciate everyone who came. It means a lot to me that so many people are so supportive. And having run that sort of election day oversight in Columbus, it's particularly close to my heart what goes on here. And so I wanted to give you guys sort of an overview as to what we learned from doing in 2006, sort of what we look for, and out of this whole spectrum of election protection that's getting covered this weekend, just really help narrow like the sliver that Video the Vote really sort of monitors and documents and polices and stuff. And I also wanted to give an outlook as to how we'll be approaching the 2008 election and what sort of efforts we can make here today for organizing something locally between the people here, because I'll try to go around to different places in Ohio and other swing states and do this, but I don't even know what that schedule's going to be yet. So as much as I can sort of leave little piles of organization behind me along the way, at least that's like planting seeds. So sorry, travel, drying out. What we were able to learn from 2006 is that if somebody is sitting next to the election protection people in a call center and they're looking over their shoulder when they get a call, because the election protection people aren't in the presence of mind to say, hey, go tape that. If you hover and you absorb the information as it comes in and then you call someone else to go shoot it, that can be the quickest way to get it out and get it around. And so while before we sort of focused on maybe trying to figure out how we could spread out work with people working with hubs of uploading footage, because not everyone will have a computer to upload footage, not everyone will have a video camera, that was 2 years ago, and the one thing that'll be constantly changing about video election protection efforts is technology. So every big election is sort of going to be a new deal. So the deal this year is that we think that we can try to get people to upload the footage a lot more locally from wherever they are based on a dispatch from wherever the central election protection call center is. And as I mentioned last night, we have a partnership with YouTube where they're apparently going to give us some free cameras or something, which is great not just for the sponsorship, but this is new technology where you could actually have some camera that'll go straight up to YouTube. So that's a really exciting appeal, I think, to people who haven't done this before. And so I think that that's something that we can stress in trying to get other people to do this and make it look, hip and cool. But hopefully we'll be able to see these cameras ourselves in the next few weeks, because it's not that long to the election, and we'll try to do some tests. And I mean, I'm sure that the caveat with getting something free on a mass scale is that you're really the beta test of it to see all the bugs and what happens with it, so that'll be something. But that's for people who don't have normal video cameras that will actually have features like focusing and zooming in and out and things like that. So, but like I said, I haven't seen these yet. So, but I will go over sort of the range of things that that Video the Vote was sort of set out to look at. Now, it's true that the essential points, inside, what's happening on a electronic card on a machine, there's not a video camera for that. It's true that in like the Board of Elections meetings when they're talking about like whatever crazy asinine rule they're going to come up with to make it harder for people to vote, we're not there for that either, and that's why they're talking like that, because they know they're not on video. So, but in the whole process, here's where Video the Vote was very useful in 2006, and then I'll go into what we're trying to do in 2008 to sort of expand that influence. In 2006, what we were able to do in the wake of House Bill 3 was follow up on the massive amount of people being confused about the voter ID requirements. And these were things that were being deliberately confusing by the Secretary of State's office down until the last possible minute on Election Day, issuing conflicting, rulings, sending emails to supporters, saying, finally clarifying stuff on Election Day, so knowing in Ohio, since that was the main issue, that was something that we wanted to get a lot of testimonials from. And also, the goal of Video the Vote is not just to capture stuff and say, aha, there's confusion, there's long lines, there's machine breakdowns, there's testimonials from people who are given a provisional ballot that shouldn't have. The idea is to be able to post stuff the same day so that on Election Day, while the polls are still open, you have the opportunity of election protection lawyers to go to court, demand that a poll worker or a judge be removed or properly informed. If they can make the polls stay open later, the media can report on some of these things, and there's still a chance to do something while the polls are still open and while there's an opportunity. So the kinds of things we captured across the country, and you don't always know what cities these are going to happen in. Denver had huge meltdowns. Colorado's going to be a really important swing state this year. It might be the deciding state. And Steve Rosenberg, who's just here, would be the guy to really tell you a lot about that. I'm sorry, Roosevelt would be the guy to tell you about a lot of that stuff. And they've had 300,000 or 200,000 names purged already going into it this year. And again, it's mostly in the big cities. It's Denver, it's Boulder. And so I can guarantee you there's going to be something of a cluster there, as well as a lot of these other swing states. And so being able to document the lines and raise awareness both creates this opportunity for day of enforcement and rectification. It creates a sort of deterrence, hopefully, in my mind. The bigger our presence, that election officials know that they're going to be sort of shown to be sort of inept or stubborn, not helpful. And down the line, there's also the possibility that these videos are used to work for reform, either in county, state, or national issues. And I think as the election reform movement picks up, I really see this catching on where, I think like I was saying last night, you see Greg Palast talking about caging in 2004, not knowing what it is, and man, everybody knows about caging this year. It's crazy. Media, people who deny that it happens, know that it, know the word, and so there's this awareness, and so I sense that we're part of something much bigger, where a lot of people are just starting to learn how elections actually work, and it's not something like the water where you turn it on and votes happen, they get counted fairly, and you turn it off. So I'm recognizing that the media is very tuned in on this. Election officials are getting grief from their constituents, and that's really who they care about. And and so once we end up getting the this kind of collective of energy, what I did learn from 2006 is that we can, once enough people get together on something, the media does finally cover it. And they do. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The media does cover this stuff when that's where the story is, when the people that they're trying to entertain are all up on something else. And then the politicians follow the media, and then, because that's where the cameras are. And so what I learned in 2006 is that it is very possible for the people to create a change of awareness very quickly, very abruptly. And yet, it can happen, it can seem so insurmountable for so long. And so this year, what we've been trying to do is get a jump on what we see happening this time around. So it's good to get some testimonials about what's happening for improvement down the line, but this time, because the internet has been circulating so many different reports based on actual issues. The Michigan Messenger article about foreclosures being used to knock people off the rolls potentially by that state GOP party was everywhere so fast in the course of a weekend. And that was just Michigan. Again, that's going to be a really important state. There's some history to that in Ohio. There's a lot of reports in Florida of Democrats, staunch lifetime Democrats, getting these mailings from the McCain campaign saying either that they're confirming that they're registered as undecided or Republican, asking them for money or offering them an absentee ballot. Some of these letters have "do not forward" on it. And and people actually know that, a lot of people know that this can actually fit into the profile of caging, that if this letter gets returned, then that name can be used by the Republican Party to say, oh, this person doesn't live there anymore, we have to knock them off the rolls. And to my understanding, that's what the pre-election day Board of Elections monitoring is for, which is to sort of hover around for when those names get brought in and they're like, okay, this person don't live there, knock them off the rolls, we're gone. That's the moment when the actual caging happens. So what I've been trying to do in Florida, where I just was, and I'll be going back there to the south of Florida, is to get accounts from journalists, election supervisors, people who've received these letters, so that we can put together a piece that the media can use, as well as we can circulate online, saying like, look at this mailing, it says do not forward, it's from John McCain saying I'm a registered Republican. I've never been a registered Republican. Why are they spending lots of money on postage sending this to people with a bogus voter ID number, which is, people in Florida have ID numbers. What does this mean? And while it's true that mailings in and of itself are not proof that anyone has been caged, what I'm hoping is that by raising attention to it, we can try to dissuade people from trying to show up and follow through on knocking those names out. But at the same time, we don't know what the game is going to be for whoever these people are that like to throw elections. But it's really about listening to where you are. The one thing I can really appreciate more and more is that all politics are local. And it seems like such a truism, just like as Ohio goes, so goes the nation, but it's true. Ohio is like a mini America in so many ways. It's crazy. And politics are all local. And so all elections are local. And so they vary completely from precinct to precinct, county to county. And generally they're pretty ass backwards. It's astounding. Even when it's not. I've lived in New York. I've lived in all these blue states, so I haven't even really appreciated it. But California, New York, that's where some of the most messed up election problems are. Because there's not that kind of intensity of oversight. When I screened the film in New York the first time, some guy stood up, African-American gentleman in his 30s, he's like, I'm fed up with this stuff, I want to run for office. What can I do in a state like Ohio or these other states? And Marcus B. Miller was there, so I totally had the backup of the authority to bring this in. I was like, well, you know what? You could start in New York right now, because in Manhattan on Super Tuesday, there are about 80 different precincts 72 precincts that registered 0 votes for Obama in New York, and 2 of them were in Harlem. And that's crazy. I mean, there was a parade happening. There was a stupid, this is how bad I am with sports. Whatever sports team won, they're having the Jets parade or some crap the same day as the election, going right through all these polling places. It's ridiculous. And so there's so much oversight that has to happen on just a local level, that wherever we are, even if it's not an important swing state like this one, there is plenty of policing to be done. Yeah?
I'm just going to ask you, what has been your, have you had any type of response from the politicians? And I just want to comment that I think the politicians, elected officials, whether they're in Columbus, local, whatever, they've been missing in action. And they should have had a backbone to speak up, because this is very important. And they should be here. They should have been in here in the past. And they should be concerned. And I think we need to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it. We have to hold them accountable. And the more you call them up, and it's interesting that because we at least got the media push in 2006, when you say video the vote to some people, politicians or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, I think I heard of it. And it's self-explanatory, thankfully, if you haven't heard of it. But honestly, the more that I've seen, I've crashed Secretary of State conventions in DC, and I realize that these people really are concerned about what their complaints are. The squeaky wheel really does get the grease. And talking to Brad Friedman from Brad Blog, he's like, for all the noise about the electronic voting machines, that tide is kind of turning. And I've had election machine manufacturers tell me, you guys won, we can't sell this stuff anymore. And so at this point, it's just tons of money that's already been sunk into different counties, but it's so unpopular now, And so you've got all these secretaries of state who really do care about what's going on underneath. And as they get information, certainly there are people with agendas, as we all know, and there's other people, as I continue to appreciate, who are just functionaries who just don't like to be told how to do their job, and don't like anybody else, don't want to be exposed for things that you left out, and that's as much of an obstacle to get through. So the sort of couple of tiers that I'm hoping that we can do with video cameras, and then not everyone has to actually be videotaping, but they can support people who are videotaping, is to apply exactly that kind of pressure, to do that kind of follow-up to your election officials leading up to election day. One of the things that we're going to try to get into a lot, and this certainly resonates here in Columbus, I just don't know how we shoot it exactly yet, is the issue about allotment of voting machines. Checking ahead of time what they're going to give to different communities. And the Advancement Project is someone that we're connected with a lot. Because I'm doing a lot of this, like go explore Florida and shoot stuff in Ohio, I'm not like the outreach guy. I don't know who all the partner organizations are. I heard about the YouTube camera thing during the screening last night. So, but I can answer questions as these things come together. But I do know we're going to try to do something about the allotment of voting machines. And there starts to be certain issues that, this is all leading up to the election, that ultimately you just need testimonials from people for. So I was talking to this journalist in Sarasota, great guy, political junkie, he's been there for years, ridiculously nonpartisan. You could show him all these caging letters, he won't speculate, but he can tell you the entire history and all this other stuff. And he said that after he published this story about Democrats in South Florida getting these letters, he got tons of other calls from people in other parts of the country, other parts of Florida, from Tampa, but also people in New Mexico, people in Wisconsin, who've gotten these same suspicious McCain letters in all Democratic areas. And he's not heard of any of these things going to any Republican areas. So the amount of deliberate effort just on this one issue strikes that, makes that curious. But what goes a long way to making this, and particularly in the echo chamber of all these reports bouncing around on the internet that get posted on blogs and amplified, is that we can actually get someone in New Mexico, where people are really pissed off because they have tons of purging problems there, to go videotape people who've gotten, or at least one or two people who've gotten the mailing. And so when these pieces come together, then this is how you really get that sort of, citizen journalism and really empowering people to sort of be your own network to make these issues. And then we try to, put them all together in like a slick video piece so that we can get it out. And particularly in the era of YouTube and, a lot of people have cameras and a way to upload now. Essentially, you kind of have to make your stuff look professional all the more, just so it doesn't look like another random, kind of video that you see on YouTube. So that is why we have to up the production value, but at the same time, and that's why I'm flying all over Florida with Fortunato, my brilliant DP, who makes all this stuff look great. But we can't be everywhere, and even the country's really big. Florida's big, Ohio's big. These places are crazy to get around, and you can spend all day flying, and then news stories are broken by the time you get to your hotel. So increasingly, we really will need people locally to respond to things as it comes out, because we don't know where the game is this year. If this many people know of caging, it's probably only one of 60 ways they're doing it. And so, what you can actually capture on videotape is a form of truth. That is something that can be submitted in court. So many other things can't. And so the fact that the videos that we accumulated in 2006 were used on Capitol Hill, that didn't actually occur to us at the time, but People for the American Way, Common Cause, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law, they were like, this is what we're talking about. This is why we need to create an amendment against voter misinformation, because we have this in Maryland where people are being given flyers saying, vote for these guys, they're Democrats, and it's clearly being handed out in African-American precincts with the red, green, and black colors on it, and they're Republicans, so that kind of blatant misinformation. So these are things that you're like, well, we had someone with a camera, I didn't know they were going to be that bad, but I'm glad we got it, And when you get these physical pieces of clear intent or misinformation, that's kind of what we're able to latch onto as a form of actual active voter suppression. So something that's happened at a lot of schools in Colorado, Virginia, or misinformation of people students being told that if they try to register locally, then they won't be eligible for financial aid because they're no longer listed as a dependent with their parents, which is completely untrue. But when you hear this from the Secretary of State's office, you're like, well, what the hell? I didn't know that, And so that's exactly the kind of stuff we have to fight and compete against, But again, we need accounts as this stuff happens. So as much as I want to come here and lots of other places and tell you guys what I think we can do, you know, as much as anything else, we need to hear from everyone else about what's really going on and cast as wide a net as possible for how these different things are coming together. So as we start to put these pieces together leading up to the election, we'll also be looking at the best way to cover different areas based on the number of people we have that can participate. So as I was saying, you don't need everybody to videotape. Not everyone has a camera. Not everyone has a way to shoot and upload. But even just calling about, I mean, first of all, I would tell everybody to vote as soon as the polls open and make sure that they're open on time. Big deal, it happens anywhere. If a poll isn't open on time, that's bad. And that's the first thing that we would report, you know. Of course, the kinds of things at that point, you know, police cars parked outside, big no-no, shouldn't have that. Anyone sort of turning people away. I mean, I think literally there's like almost no circumstances under which people would be turned away. I mean, you would at least get a provisional ballot. And actually, we just checked with the Secretary of State of Ohio's office. There's different, you know, different states have different policies. There's lots of confusion, but you can film in the polls in Ohio as long as you are not shooting someone's vote, harassing anyone. And the Secretary of State's office recommended that you talk to the judge of your precinct beforehand, just to let them know that you will be there videotaping. So there's the videotaping as a sort of surveillance of the areas where you're going to be, you're going to vote, you're going to show up, and like what happened to us in Los Angeles on Super Tuesday, we got there, I voted early. I did see something that was a little confusing because this was like the big day where independents could vote for the Democrat or the Republican, and a lot of people voted for Ron Paul. And so there's all this confusion when and like a third of California is independent or something like really intense, that if you wanted to vote in this Democratic primary, you had to check this one bubble saying that I want to vote as a Democrat, and then there was the actual ballot of who you're voting for. So by the midday, it was called the double bubble problem, and we had so many people calling up about the confusing issues of this ballot. And that if you didn't check this one saying, yeah, I'm going to vote on the Democratic ballot, which they already handed you, which doesn't make sense anyway, because you asked for this and you're voting on that ballot, you should have to check another box saying, yeah, I'm voting on this ballot, then they wouldn't count the ballot. So just being able to show up when the polls open and look around and see if something doesn't make sense or if it's not working properly. You know, we've heard reports of like, you know, grumpy poll officials who like didn't want to surrender the big book because they couldn't get the machines to turn on, but they didn't want anyone else to do it. I mean, sometimes weird things happen. And again, because it's like this jerry-rigged process that happens every other year, I mean, you're voting out of people's garages, you know, church basements where they drop off voting machines for weeks ahead of time. I mean, it's not the most secure scientific process by any means. So there's always solutions that, you know, there's always ways to improve it when it's working right, okay? You know, take all the ill intent out of it, you know. There's always going to be a reason to like, well, maybe we should have ink in the pens that people are marking the ballots with. Maybe that would be a good idea. You know, I'm not trying to rewrite the system here, but there's always some basic things that you could bring to people's attention. So other things that we've come to look for and recognize is confusing poll workers who can give misinformation. And that's a common problem. And again, it doesn't necessarily point to ill intent, but after 2006 in Ohio, Ken Blackwell had issued so many rulings and, you know, miscommunicated to the press, you know, so that we actually videotaped a guy who was a precinct worker giving the wrong information, saying if you had a utility bill to prove that you lived there, then they would use that. And so people were being forced to vote with things that they shouldn't have to, you know. In Missouri, I think in one of the early primaries, someone tried to go in, vote. They just passed an ID law. They asked him for his driver's license. He knew he shouldn't have to use his driver's license. Another form of ID would suffice. And as he tried to clarify it to these poll workers, they got agitated, they got annoyed, they called the police, and they had him arrested. Now, that ended up becoming a big news story in Ohio. And so those people look sort of foolish. This guy got arrested for voting, trying to vote, and as a result, it creates the issue that a lot more people have to, you know, become more aware as to what is the proper ID. So what I'd love to be able to do this year is create videos early on in the day, on election day, that it will help clarify for people what's going on. So if it's in LA, it's like, okay, we have a problem. Double bubble, don't get confused with this. This is what it looks like. Now we're showing you, spread this around, get it out there. Same thing with ID laws. People are saying you need, the most recent address on your ID. You don't. And this is going to vary state to state, county to county. But the other things that start to really, the more major things are lines. One thing you think of with Ohio voting is lines. And I guarantee you're going to have them like never before this year. You thought there was a crazy turnout in 2004. Forget about it. This is going to be like double the turnout. It's going to be nuts. So there's going to be lines. And that's, we'll get shots of those, and that's bad. But if they're lines because they didn't get enough machines, then we need to report on that right away. If it's a line because the machine's broken down and everyone's being told to vote provisionally when they could be given paper ballots, then that's something else that needs to be reported. In pursuant to some of these issues that I talked about where people are getting these suspicious mailings, and if they're told that, you're going to have a lot of people showing up to vote, giving in a provisional ballot who shouldn't have. And I would love to get an affidavit from every one of those people eventually as to what it was that they received at some point in the mail, because I sure don't keep track of my junk mail, that so that we can start to retroactively figure out how they got knocked off the list. Yeah?
Do you know if it's a public record about who was given a provisional ballot as opposed to who got the vote for real?
That's a good question.
No, it is not.
No? Because I know it's, again, state to state, little things, I'm always learning stuff in every state. Like in Florida, if you request a absentee ballot, that's public record or something, So it varies, but my fear is that for instance, the McCain ballot that went out to only Democrats saying 3 steps to apply for your absentee ballot, just fill this out and send it in. My fear is that people just never get an absentee ballot, and then when they show up at the polls, they've got like a V or something next to their name, which means that they already got a vote in, and unless they're presenting that, then they have to vote provisionally until they can confirm it. So there are different ways that people will sort of show up, and do we know if our votes counted? That's wishful thinking. I don't know, but yeah, you in the back.
So in Ohio, is provisional always the best fallback though? If anybody shows up and if they say, I was told that I voted absentee and I didn't, or I've been caged and I'm off the list, is that the best always fallback to tell them request a provisional, or?
I guess that's the catch-all. You don't really have that many options, but at the same time, I think a lot of poll workers are so quick to hand those things out when they're confused, and that's part of what I think that sort of voter education, applies to. But that's something that I think Bob would probably be able to answer best, at least in Ohio specifically. Yeah.
I'm expecting to be a board observer. I was a board observer in 2006, and there were situations that I found that would be good to photograph, but I'm going to be, the board observer can go to any precinct as well as the board. Okay. And so you're busy as can be. Right. And if I call one of your people or you send people down, do I have to stand around and wait until they get there?
No, you shouldn't necessarily have to do that, but there will be, and this is a great scenario to have to talk people through, but again, as I found is that, when you call the Election Protection Center, the 866R vote, and they're dispatched to different parts of the country based on where you are, there are attorneys there who will know what's right, what's wrong, and they're nonpartisan, and they're really quick to react to stuff. And but like I said, you sort of have to, lean over their shoulder and overhear what they're talking about. They're fine. They're just not thinking about dispatching camera people yet. But that's exactly the kind of thing that I would have people to do. So like when I've worked in dispatch centers, because of how we set up the website and how we'll enter in when you guys sign up today, we have different zip codes that we can pull things up by. So when we have a report, we'll enter in a zip code of we're having messes in New Mexico right now, and you enter in a zip code and different people who signed up come up, and they've signed up to shoot, to upload, to help transfer people, whatever. And so that's how we can sort of defensively react to things. There's the proactive where you show up and make sure your own polling place opens on time, make sure people there are nice and have ballots and ink and machines that are working, they don't have a confusing ballot layout. And then there's also this response aspect where as monitors or people have problems voting, this is the kind of thing where then we can relay this to other people. And so in doing that, we would, try to be able to cover as many different things as possible in this short window of time that is from when the polls open to when they close. You had your hand up.
Do you think there's value in recording the training that's being given to poll workers as well?
I think so. I mean, and the follow-up for that is definitely on the very local information, because I think that's great, because then other people can sit online, the poll workers could be refreshed, and after the fact, if there's any confusion, you can say, no, that's what they're told, and then we have it on, YouTube. You can see it for yourself. So, yeah, I would, and I haven't worked as much with poll workers yet. I know that there's a big push to try to get younger people in it, but I know that the average poll worker age is 72, and that often, and that's a national thing, and it goes by seniority. So of course, you're going to have a lot of the same poll workers every year. So a lot of the computer problems are not really going to necessarily know, and so even just seeing, for me personally, as someone watching this, if I'm watching a video of 6 or 8, senior citizens being shown the latest, premier election system software, I'd be like, oh, dude, this is not good. And that's on a whole other separate level. That's just like, if you wondered what went wrong, this might be one of the points. Yes?
The voting system is what it is right now. But are you surprised by your travels now, what you've witnessed? Are you surprised that here we are in 2008 and that we don't have a uniform voting system nationally? Carter has come out and said that the Carter Center would not, this was after the 2000 judicial coup, that our standards would not meet the Carter Center standards for the election in the U.S. So are you shocked, and is your group pushing for a uniform voting system?
I'm not any more surprised that we don't have a uniform election system than I am surprised that we don't have uniform health care. I mean, there's certain things that are so obvious that, and when you really look at it and you look at the Help America Vote Act, it's like, how did you come up with something that made it much worse? Like, who sat around and wrote all this stuff to come up with these terrible things? So this is part of why we need to have fair elections, just to get these people out in the first place. Because I'm not worried about the votes being there for Obama. There's going to be so many votes for Obama, you wouldn't even want to count them all, okay? How they get shaved off at every step down the chain is really the interesting thing to watch, of that margin of millions of votes. And, they can't steal every vote until they have tanks on all the streets, basically. But it's a bigger country.
Is part of your agenda to push for a uniform voting system nationally?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can start to push for based on the technology, that we continue to, observe what works, what doesn't. But ultimately, everyone wants, many people in the room watching hand-counted paper ballots that take a long time. That's ultimately the only kind of oversight. In a public place outside, except where the wind can't blow away the ballots. I mean, literally the most transparent process. I mean, that's what I loved about that, that footage of the Ukraine elections, like a big plastic box. My God, how simple is that?
UK counts the votes on television for everyone.
That's crazy. That's like, it's so simple. My God. Yes.
So I'm trying to understand what your major focus for the day of the election is. You really want any indiscrepancy. The most important thing is that they get uploaded right away.
That really is, because, and I'll give you the bigger picture now. Okay, so you'll have reports coming in on our YouTube account through our webpage and stuff, and there will be Ian, Daniel, working in probably DC with lawyers as different reports come in to get a sense as to what's happening around the country. And so while these things start to get pushed out in different areas, I mean, there's a whole other level of people have to make sense of these things and say, okay, is this just isolated confusion? Is this like a huge mess that's happening here that's clearly deliberate, where they put one machine in a city for 1 million people? I mean, and so that's kind of like the larger perspective, which is going to be really hard to have, frankly, on the ground. And even if you're just uploading stuff for lots of different people, you can see a trend in Columbus, but pardon me, you might not necessarily understand what's going on nationally at that point. So what we would be doing, I'd imagine, this year is putting it all up. And we had one YouTube account. I don't know if it'll still be multiple YouTube accounts or something, but ultimately through our site, we'd be featuring videos from different states around the different issues that are going on, so that the media, other people can sort of know if they're, sort of what's going on, on the ground. And our biggest enemy of the day will be bandwidth and how quickly stuff gets up. And
where's your central location?
I don't know yet where I'll be on election day. I'd love to be here, but California's pretty messed up, and thanks. And I would, and that is my backyard, and I would love to protect it. We've got some stupid gay marriage ban on our Constitution again this year on our ballot, so that's something to show up for there too. So yes, you.
If there's these long lines, can't people be advised that they could get paper ballots? And if, I mean, it would seem in theory that a whole lot of more people could vote on paper ballots simultaneously than on machines. And so that's one question. And the other one is then, if I'm sitting right next to this person and, you know, I can see how they're voting, how is that secured?
Why were you cheating on him? Why are you looking at the ballot? No,
I
I'm
want to
kidding.
report to the authorities how I voted.
Yeah, it's amazing how, like, this is actually probably as secure as some of these, like, electronic voting machines are when you actually look at them. That's about as much privacy as you get. The other, as for the other part, you know, in California, I know you can ask in precincts that have electronic voting machines, you can ask for a paper ballot. They're supposed to have like 10 or 50% of paper ballots on hand, and you can ask for that. I don't know if you can do that in Ohio. Can you?
Yes, you can.
You can. Okay, that's what I thought. Man, states blur together really fast.
Bruder just said that they just passed that you can, somebody just mentioned that in the last meeting, that you, as a poll worker, can mention to people in long lines
Right.
that they can have a paper ballot, that
Okay.
you are able to do that.
That's it. Just come through. Yes.
The general rule is that they can't mention to the poll worker that they have paper ballot, to the voter, that they have paper ballots.
They don't offer. Right.
They do have them.
Right. You got to go
And
ask.
SOS Bruner is requiring that they have 4 posters in each precinct saying that they do have them. So even if the the poll workers don't say anything, if the people read, they can know to ask for them. And they're not just for the purpose of long lines, they're for the problem that some people don't trust the DREs and would rather vote on a paper ballot.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
If you are challenged, if you were, say, in a polling place videoing something, and you are challenged, and they say you're not allowed to video here, you have to leave, and we're calling the police, what do you do? Is there something in writing that you say, no, I have the right to be here, I have the right to video, to show
Let
them?
them call the police and get it on video.
Yeah. Kind of. In some cases, being polite and respectful is always the way. And there will be certain poll monitors who are poll workers who will be concerned about it. And we, as I said, the Secretary of State did say that we are allowed to be inside the polling place, which we don't get from other states, and that's huge. But even doing testimonials outside, ultimately, of the polling place is helpful, because then you can show the polling place, you can tell it's a real person, they can give their name, you can see that it's Bexley Middle School or whatever, and then that's, you know, a fact, and that's, you know, that is absolutely, you know, sufficient. And, you know, it can be kind of hard and loud and crowded, perhaps, to shoot in some polling places anyway. But yeah, but also you have to be able to take the initiative if you see someone getting turned away and asking people if they've had problems coming out as well, because, you know, not everyone's going to come out all worked up, you know. So, yes?
Someone's like, I'm sorry, just from my experience on the 06, sometimes if people are really confrontational, the best thing you can do is capture them being confrontational and get that guy to dodge. Like, sometimes it's okay, you can call their bluff in the cops, and other times just don't, you know, just get the fact that they're not being helpful.
Well, we should be polite and respectful, but we should also stand our ground, shouldn't we? I mean, if their intent is to get us to leave and we politely and respectfully leave, then we're not really doing our job.
Yeah, and then at the same time, depending on how they handle it, that might be like one of those red flags too, you know?
Yeah.
So it is hard, and that's, you know, I've taped like police riots, I've taped all kinds of situations. I think in my general practice, I can see the line that I'm not to cross. You know, that Andrew Meyer guy who got tased by the police, he doesn't see the line. That kid's like blind. I saw that footage, I was like, that kid did not see the line, man. That was all I could say. And so that will, you know, I can always sort of sense when someone's about to like flip out or go too far, or, you know, I can stand around. But ultimately they have to ask you once before they do anything like the rest of
But
it.
we'll probably have our own banks of lawyers and whatever. I mean, the
Yeah.
Democratic Party, the Obama campaign, or a local, you know.
That's true, but you're also losing time that tape could be up on YouTube if you're, sitting at jail cell. So.
And you're with someone else before,
Yeah,
you know.
I want to take a couple more questions.
Call your lawyer first. So they
I also
can
have to
come
announce
and
that
see
at 3 p.m.
Sure.
in room 402, Steve Freeman will be holding a session on SourceWatch's election protection wiki. And SourceWatch is a really great resource if you guys aren't familiar with it. So that's happening at 3. I'm also going over the stuff again at 4. So, but I want to try to help get people back on the schedule. So let me just answer.
Suggestion on uploading, would it be helpful in areas that problems are expected to have an advanced mapping of areas where free wireless access is available, cafes, restaurants?
That's
whatever?
absolutely
Because
the
that
kind
way
of stuff-
nobody has to go home.
Yeah.
If they have trouble with their own access at home, that
Right.
they have some alternative to go to.
No, and I think that's absolutely the kind of local sensibility that I'd love to try to get people to work off of. And Columbus is great for all of its free Wi-Fi, but if you get a faster landline that can upload, I mean, it makes a difference. Every freaking byte makes a difference, and I didn't appreciate that stuff before. Now I do. But yeah, as part of the local organization, not everyone's going to have a computer. Not everyone's going to have a way to play the tape into a computer to upload it, and
Because
so.
even dispatching people at key locations,
Right.
or even getting a local response, this is going to be a video the vote location.
Right.
We want the proctors to be able to come in, dump their footage,
Right.
and get back out. And somebody
Right,
else
and
can
it also
handle the
depends
other.
on how spread out it is. If they take time to come in, if that's too long for them to drop it off, or if it works the other way around. So it really comes down to how many people are able to help, and what's the best use of people covering space. At least in Columbus, we know there'll probably be things worth taping. So, yes.
So if I've signed up today to do this, will I get information?
Yes, you
step
will.
by step
And,
on how to do
and
this?
certainly as we start to get close to election day, we get a better handle on the people that are here and the cameras and who's got what.
Will
So.
we be told where's the best place to go based on where we're living?
Yeah, we will have, most likely we'll be having another organization much closer to the election. This is more of the overview that I want to give people now, and some of the specifics and stuff will be, a little lost on people if we do it later.
So is that when you were saying about the 866 hour vote, that's election?
That is, yeah, that's the response number that we work off of. That's the national thing that's put up by all the nonpartisan groups. I think mainly the lawyers committee though. So, but just for a quick word about what makes the most sense to try to shoot some of these. Fortunate, I can see the camera. As I've learned, shooting someone up against a wall could just be any kind of wall, but if you can put them in front of, voting machines or the people that definitely describe what that location is, then that already makes it a lot more interesting. And then if you can also work so that you have the, do the flip up. I don't want to mess up these cameras. So if you're shooting someone up against a wall, that's not going to be the most descriptive location. But if you shoot them with, even outside, so you can see that it's that school, that time of day, there's other people going in and out, big signs of the polling place, vote today, that helps explain and verify what's going on. Because as soon as these things go up, there's going to be people saying, oh, that's BS, I made it at home, it's some web spoof, whatever. Another thing that we found that was useful to timestamp the pieces were to get someone to hold up their cell phone to the camera, because then you're working on a satellite time, and I'm sure that somehow someone could mess with it, but a lot of people are going to be prone to believe Sprint time or AT&T time or whatever, and so if you're able to just show the date and time at the beginning or at the end of your clip and get that on camera, that helps source and date and place the footage as well. The other thing that we would really need people to do is give their name to the camera as well. Their name, where they live, some follow-up information, hopefully, so we could verify later if we need to. If this turns into a legal affidavit, then that's how we have to be able to, track it down. And also be able to get them to really explain something so that they, are coherent. A lot of people, when you ask them a question in interviews, and this goes for all kinds of interviews, if you said, what color is the sky, they'd say blue. And they'd be like, okay, how do I edit in blue in the middle of this piece? Generally, you need people to say the thing back to you. So well, today, the sky's blue. And then that makes sense on its own. And this is going to happen, even when you tell people to answer you back in a full sentence, they're gonna mess it up, and then you have to remind them nicely, and then they'll say it right. That's just how it is, because people don't think like that. So that's like some of the main basics that you need to have this be like a usable, coherent, quick, verifiable clip. Yes.
I think that one way, though, to get people to be willing to talk that I've experienced is to make sure you say this is just for record, and we are nonpartisan.
Yes.
And that people open up a little more than if they see another agenda
Right.
leaping out at them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, any other questions? Because I want to make sure that we can get something out to FedEx.
Do all
Yes?
observers have to be sponsored by one of the two parties?
I don't know about in the state, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Does anybody know that?
Somebody will
I
know.
don't think it has to be a major party, because didn't Hickman do it as a member of the Green Party?
Anyone else?
This one is for
Yes.
Green Party observers,
I
isn't
mean,
it?
it's kind of obvious that Columbus is
So
going
one of
to
the
be
parties,
really
though.
well covered.
Yes.
Are you going to go like to Cincinnati?
Yes. We'll figure out something for the 3 Cs, but I'd love to get it in the rural areas too, because that's where like the most egregious stuff happens. That's where you get like the 1,000th percentile of voter turnout and stuff, you know. So, and that's probably a lot easier to videotape because it's going to be photo. But yes, sir.
Is there a reason for either written or on video releases?
You know, when you get people, thank you for asking that. When you get people to give their name, that is also the time that we ask them to, you know, to say, it's okay that you're taping me. That's all. So that oral release is fine. And if you get all their information, then it's verifiable after the fact anyway. But that really hasn't been a problem. Yes. Yeah. You just ask them to give their name, their personal information, and say it's okay for you to videotape me for use in this project, basically.
And we are videoing their personal contact information also?
Yeah, we need to be able to track you down somehow. If it's email, if it's a phone number, the workplace, something. That's all.
But they just speak.
Yeah.
My phone number is such and such. And this is
Yeah. And the other thing I'll ask people to remember is that your camera is also your microphone, so you kind of have to get up in there. So if I'm taping you from the back of the room and you're giving your contact info, might not be able to hear that, but if I sort of show up and I'm close to you and I've got your head in the frame and your shoulders, I'll probably get it, you know. So, but that's just one of the things. So we have the sign-up sheets around here, and you can also sign up on the website, and I really encourage you to pass this around and get other people involved. And particularly if you know anyone in another state that is also very vulnerable, because that sort of outreach is, you know, I mean, we do have, you know, the same number of volunteers that we did before, but, you know, we don't know where that stuff's going to be this year. And we also will need to start to get a sense as to who has what kind of camera or car or cell phones or stuff like that. So thank you guys very much. I'm really psyched to see so many people here, and I can't wait to see how Columbus goes this time around. So thank you very much, guys.